I'm happy to introduce Jordan Sissel, who is the czar of logging for DreamHost. Always happy to introduce somebody that practices hate-driven ops like the rest of us. So, Jordan.
No, workstation locked. All right, sweet. So I'm here to talk to you guys about logstash and logs and other things. I did promise other things. My name is Jordan Sissel. As mentioned, I work at DreamHost doing logging stuff. This is one of the first times I've been able to work on an open source project full time, which is a pretty incredible milestone for me and the project, I think. But originally, I'm a sysadmin by trade. I started operations 8-10 years ago. More development role now, but I still have that ops mindset. I've been using Puppet for about 4 years. Things that I like, I really love NetHack. These are things that I can talk about literally all day. I like coding, and as of about 9 months ago, I have a little baby girl, so I will talk about babies all day long. But I'm not here to talk about those things. First off, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of my other projects. The first one being Sysadvent. It's an advent calendar type project where there are the first 24 days of Christmas, of December, one article per day, very sysadmin focused, very getting stuff done focused. It's a 4-year, this will be the 5th year of the project. So there's about 100 articles online from the past 4 years, and they're really well worth reading. Some Puppet tricks. When I use Puppet, I'm known to use it in masterless mode, which means I don't have a Puppet master, which helps scaling very easily. And I also do this thing called nodeless, where you have no node definitions and no external node classifier. And if you're interested in those things, talk to me later. Happy to describe them. I also wrote this project called FPM, mostly because I was fed up with building RPMs, and then I switched a job, and now I have to use Debian packages, and all the tools are different. So I wrote one tool to sort of rule them all. First step, a story. How everything kind of went wrong. You guys probably recognize some of this. If you're leaning forward and trying to squint, you've already failed the test. There's too much data here to read, right? You as a human, you just can't. You'd have to sit here, get a pen and paper, track stuff, figure out what's going on. Is there a problem here? We don't know. So this happens. By the way, you can't see the time, but it's 4:30 in the morning. Nagios is like, hey, wake up. And you're like, dude, what? Disk is critical. What does that mean? Hold me, it says. And this is you, basically, at 4 in the morning, anytime something wakes you up. So you log in, you realize that your disks are full. Your disks are full because you don't rotate your logs. So you're like, fuck it. It's 4 in the morning. Delete that shit. I'll worry about it when I'm awake. What else sucks? Shitty error messages. What the fuck does that mean? Apparently it means this. That's how I would feel. So the next day, after you got woken up at 4 in the morning, you blew away all the logs. Somebody comes in, business guy. We have an angry customer, help. And you haven't had sleep, really. But you're like, you know what? This is my time. You got adrenaline pumping. I'm going to save the day. You swing in, you're like, Pearl! And you fly out of the room. You make this. And the business guys can understand this. They see there's this weird anomaly there, and they work with the customer and figure out what the problem is. But now the business guy's like, you're my hero. And if you've ever looked at comics or like superhero universes, whenever there's a hero or a superhero, there's an opposite. There's a villain. There's a supervillain, right? Anytime the superhero is out of touch, is lost, the supervillain comes and screws shit up, right? So now everyone has to rely on you to wipe their butts. And that sucks. Like, once upon a time, you were a sysadmin. You were an ops dude or dudette. And it was cool, but now you're doing these one-liner things in Perl that felt cool initially, and now you're doing it every day, and it really is a drag. And you're still getting woken up 4 in the morning by Nagios. And now you're a human keyboard. And by human keyboard, I mean people are using you as their computer interface, which sucks. So don't be a human keyboard. Before I start talking about logging and logstash and things like that, I want to frame the discussion. When I say a log, what is a log? It's not one of these tree things. Can you read that? Cool. So this is a log. But what are the features of a log? It has a timestamp, right? And it has some data. But that's about as common as a schema, if you will, that you'll find with logs, right? The data format is going to vary by the application. So the only two things that I found that are in common, it has a timestamp, and there's some data associated with it. What's the data? I don't know. So that's basically it. When I say log, this is what I mean, a single event with some data attached to it. And in general, the life of a log, when the application emits it or records it, you can transmit that somewhere over the network. You might analyze it. You'll store it somewhere for a little while, and you delete it, right? This is standard when you're logging to syslog, and you log rotate it, and it goes away after a couple of days. There's some related tools in this area as well that I feel are worth mentioning. For transportation, Flume, FluentD, Scribe, and some syslog projects are very useful. For search and analytics, Hadoop is really popular. But there's also more log-focused ones, Graylog and ELSA, as well as long-term storage things like HDFS, Cassandra, and Elasticsearch. You might notice I've only listed open source tools because I don't feel like commercial products need my help with marketing. So how can Logstash help? First, Logstash is an open source tool. It's free. Free as in beer, free as in speech. It's pretty awesome, if you ask me. So before I talk about exactly what you can solve with Logstash, I'm just going to show a couple of screenshots of a demo. So here's a simple example, pretty much that same log chunk of Apache that we saw earlier. Again, if you're leaning forward and squinting, you've already failed. So in Logstash, the config file tries to be a little bit simple. I'm saying, watch this file, this Apache log file, apply some kind of filter to it. I'll talk about Grok in a little bit. But basically, you can read this as it's parsing some kind of Apache log format. Take the timestamp that is a really dumb timestamp from Apache and do something with it, and store it in Elasticsearch. Very pluggable system. And the result is that I can then do some cool search and analytics on my logs. I can ask for the top downloads for Logstash. I can find out that people are automating installations of Logstash with Chef. The query at the top says agent:chef. These are people installing it automatically. And if I zoom in, I can see that every 6 minutes, this one particular IP address is running Chef and installing, I guess, or at least downloading Logstash, which is weird, right? Every 6 minutes? It seems a little too frequently. So what else can we solve with Logstash? Regular expressions. That moment earlier when you all swang into the room valiantly, typed some Perl on a keyboard and left, and it was amazing. You probably used some regular expressions. It might have looked like this. I hope not. Does anyone know what this would match? Joe, shout it out. What? Timestamp. Well, there's like months, twice. I don't know why that is. That's weird, right? Ah, somebody's clever. There's IP addresses. So far, we look at it and we say that, well, there's some time-ish thing and some IP address-looking thing. You think TCP dump? How about HA proxy? Do you believe me? Could you prove it? Could you test it? If you managed to write that, could you do it the next day? If you wrote that, could you even read it the next day? So that's where Grok comes in. Grok is a very, what's the best way to describe it? It's a thin layer on top of a regular expression engine. You write patterns and give them a name. So instead of doing something cool and you write it to match an IP address, you just write an IP address pattern and reuse it everywhere else, just like you would with a code library or a Puppet module. You write it once, reuse it lots of places. And it comes with a lot of default patterns to match numbers, network addresses, including IP addresses and MAC addresses, URLs, all other kinds of boring things that you don't have to write yourself. And the neat property about this is that it removes the need for you to have any regular expression skills. Like whoever shouted out that previous regular expression matched part of an IP address somewhere, like that skill set you can just mostly get rid of, which I think is cool. It frees up your brain cells. So the idea is that you specify the syntax it should match, and you give it a semantic name. An example here is that in Apache, there's a field that's the number of bytes sent in the request. Well, that's a number, and you want to call it bytes. Fairly simple. Same for quoted strings. It also has more complex things that like URL path parameters, which will map really long parameters and try and chunk it up for you. But not everything is a string, so Grok gives you these type conversions. Like number was an example. If you were to capture a number with a regular expression yourself, it would come out as a string. And then if you want to use that in some calculation later, you would have to turn it into a number before you can use it. Grok helps you with that. So here's an example. Sample log, pretty simple syslog, and you just use different patterns to describe the different parts. Again, you're using roughly English to describe the structure of this log format. And syslog timestamp, for example, breaks down into month, some spaces, month, day, and time. Same for hostname. Like, I don't want to write hostname. I wrote it once, and I have some tests that verify that it works, and never touch it again. Same for syslog program, which is a subset. I mentioned tests. Like, how often do you write regular expressions and then write some like cool test suite to verify that it matches the things that you need it to, and also doesn't match the things that it shouldn't? Well, Grok ships with a lot of that. So it ships with a number pattern and a test suite to verify that if it generates a list of 1,000 numbers, it actually matches correctly. A side rant, also related to pattern matching, is time. So can any of you guys identify this time format? Shout it. Unix epoch. Is there a time zone? UTC, you hope? So epoch is defined as being in UTC, but I've seen applications that use epoch numbers in local time. What? So compared to the last one, what is wrong about this one? What's missing? This is a timestamp from Apache. Milliseconds. If you have more than one request per second, you have no idea how far apart those were, right? And it's in a weird format. Like, you can't sort it. The first thing is day. What's missing in this one? What's wrong with this one? Besides milliseconds missing? Past? Time zone's there. It has Friday. That's kind of weird. Isn't that like duplicate information? Like if you ask a computer, what day of the week was November 21st, 97? It's probably like, dude, it's a Friday. You don't need that information. This one, missing what year is it, right? You have no idea. You can assume current year, but you're probably wrong. Yeah, what's wrong with this one, right? Yeah, exactly. Which one is the year? Which one is the month? Which one is the day? Are those even things? Is it a star date? What about this one? It's a star date. It has a period and a comma, which is kind of cool, because usually, like in the US, we use periods for stuff, and everywhere else uses commas. I'm sorry, what is it? Time since boot. In jiffies. How long is a jiffy? No one knows. No, it's year, month, day, dot, something, you hope. No time zone. But it has milliseconds, which is kind of cool. Oh, this one. Any of you guys daemon tools users? This is a format called TAI64. It's very weird. Also based in, not in UTC, it's based on TAI. Yeah, anyway. But like this is 7 different time formats. And the likelihood of you seeing all 7 of these formats on a single server, pretty high, right? So if you're trying to correlate Apache errors with MySQL errors, your joins or how you sort everything together is going to be on a timestamp, and they use completely different formats. So logstash comes with a date filter to fix exactly this bullshit. For example, MySQL has its own pretty flower version of timestamps. The date filter helps you turn that into something standard. so that you can have all of your events with the same exact time format, so you can search and sort and compare and see exactly when everything happened. Seriously, stop inventing time formats. Makes me so angry. So, some other things you can do with logstash. This is one event. Everyone agrees this is one event? This is a stack trace from one thing that went wrong. A lot of log processing systems do everything by line, so you'll get 4 events here. And if you're searching, you're not going to find, you're going to find part of the stack trace, which kind of sucks. So logstash has a filter to solve this. You're saying if the line starts with a space, it belongs to the previous line. So we're merging up. Another good example is getting Apache metrics. That graph I showed you earlier, which I will show again, using statsd to output to graphite so that we can get your response codes tracked, counted, and graphed. So you can alert on them. How many errors happened in the last hour? So we alert on that. Also, there's a lot of outputs for different metricing systems as well. So that config previously generates this data from your logs. And if you already have graphite installed, getting your logs into this is quite easy. It's as simple as this config. What else can we talk about? So I started doing Apache analysis at work, and we added how long each request took. And so I'm like, what are the values? Let's find out. What's the min? The min is negative 1.6 million something. Like, that's weird. A request took less than a second? Does Apache have a time machine? Have you all, does it? I mean, I don't know. I don't think it does. It seems weird to me, right? So you start digging into it. And I'm asking for where duration is less than 0. And I find a couple of hits. I find only a few hosts are having this problem, which I think is a problem. So what's going on here? The request duration is less than 0. Well, like good operations guys, the team at DreamHost uses NTP. Every few minutes, NTP's like, I'm fixing the clock because we got a little bit of skew. But Apache uses get time of day for counting durations. And I think the best analogy I can give for this is that next time daylight savings happens, when we roll forward, 10 seconds before, start holding your breath. 10 seconds after, breathe out. You just held your breath for an hour. That was cool. So that's the same thing Apache is doing. It's using like a wall clock that's continuously being tuned by NTP to calculate durations. So I don't even know if I can trust this value. So yeah, time skewing backwards makes Apache have negative request times. So that's some of the logstash power. And with the way logstash is designed is you have a bunch of inputs, some filters, and some outputs. Any of you Unix admins have seen this before. Unix pipe model, very similar. If you're a Windows admin, you've seen PowerShell, very similar model. You can pipe things to other things. Logstash comes with 23 inputs, and this is always growing, 18 filters and 40 outputs. That's a lot of plugins. Inputs include like syslog, files, other network things. Filters include the date filter, grok, which will help you parse out your stuff. What else? Mutate, yeah, which lets you anonymize things if you need to. What else? Outputs. There's way more outputs than anything else because, as it turns out, people don't really know where they want to have all of their event data stored. So we just have lots of support for it. I want to talk a little bit about the project focuses, specifically function focus, design focus, and community focus. And community focus, I think, is the most important thing. So a feature focus, in general, is transporting logs from anywhere to anywhere else. That's why there are so many input and output plugins. In processing logs, that's why there are so many filter plugins. Because there are a lot of logs in really bullshit formats. And logstash helps you sort of structure them and get them in a way that you can do analysis on them. And once you process them, ship them somewhere else, you get them in a nice format, I want to provide search and analytics. Those screenshots I showed, those are the web interface that logstash comes with. So design features. As a sysadmin, I really hate if a piece of software sounds cool. A lot of people are excited about it. But to deploy it, I have to make serious infrastructure changes about the way my systems and my network are designed. That sucks. So I want logstash, first and foremost, to fit your infrastructure. If you have to change a lot of things to even just try logstash, the project is a failure. I mentioned there's a lot of plugins. People are writing plugins pretty much every week. We get a new one. So my comments there are that it is written in Ruby, and that a lot of people don't know Ruby, but that doesn't stop them from submitting plugins, which are functional. And I get a lot of, probably about 5 or 6 different plugins now where people send me patches to add them, and they have this big apologetic cover letter that says, "Dear sir, I am very sorry. I don't know Ruby. I suck at it. I'm a PHP guy, but I wrote this. Please have it." And it works. And that's fine. And I think that's a good mark of a good extendable plugin system. For community-wise, I think this is my most important point, that if a newbie is trying logstash and failing, that's a bug. It's either a bug in the code, or it's a bug in the documentation, or something. But it's certainly not the new user's fault. I've had enough experience with open source projects where they have that sort of send patches or die mentality. That is bullshit. Because I am confident in writing code. That's fine with me. I don't have all the ideas. I don't have all the bug reports. So to me, contributions are much, much more than just code. If you file bugs, if you send ideas, if you just file a bug and say, you know what, I saw this weird thing, I don't know what happened, that's fine with me. That's data. That's useful data. So yeah, anyway. Contributions, way more than just code. And with that respect, there's a lot of community build-up around the logstash project. Cabana, that web interface, the web interface you saw in screenshots, that's Cabana. That was written by someone outside the community who joined the community and said, here's this awesome tool I wrote. There's a Puppet module available, so you can install logstash pretty easily. And that was thanks to the Puppet Labs recently had a module bounty where they got React, logstash, and a couple other modules submitted, which is awesome. And there's also a third tool, logstash CLI, so you can do searches and analytics from the command line, which is where a lot of Unix admins are more comfortable. So how do I have logstash deployed at DreamHost? Right now, taking about 20,000 events a second of only Apache logs. If you don't know what DreamHost is, one of DreamHost's products is like shared web hosting. They do WordPress and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm just trying to take all that data and get some analytics on it through logstash. This averages out to be about 250 million events a day, roughly 75 gigs a day of data, 160 web servers, and I'm probably going to grow that to about 1,000 soon. All of this being sucked in and managed by 7 logstash servers. And as far as resource utilization goes, I can grow to 1,000 web servers sending data without even increasing the size of my logstash cluster, which is nice. And this, to me, is a small deployment. So the plan, what am I going to use logstash for, right? I'm at DreamHost. DreamHost needs to get value out of their employees. How can I help logstash provide value for them? And you can do all of this yourself. This is what I intend for logstash to do for you and your companies. First, help the ops guys trace stuff quicker, right? There's a lot of servers. How do we find out exactly where things are? Well, give them a centralized search. I also want to reduce the ops team human keyboard problem. DreamHost is a very customer support focused company. So that means there's a lot of technical support staff asking questions of the ops team. A lot of times, those team-to-team communications can become a big boundary where you find walls being built, people fighting. And I find that you can sometimes insert tools to help alleviate some of these problems. Again, giving log access to other teams, not just technical support. If the developers ask for root access, maybe they really just want access to the logs. What if you collected all those logs and provided them in a nice and neat interface? Logstash can help with that. Provide real-time visibility to customers. Your customers log in. They think something's down. Wouldn't it be cool if you could proactively tell them if you knew something was down? And I want to do this across the thousands of servers on billions of events per day, which, again, I think is probably like a medium-sized deployment, what I'm looking for. So in closing, you should get your stash on. Logstash.net is the site for the project. There's a mailing list and an IRC channel for support. My best recommendation is that if you're finding yourself having trouble, again, if newbies are having problems, it's a bug. These 2 support channels exist to make the documentation better. You come, report our shitty documentation, we help you solve the problem, and then we fix the docs so the next person that comes along has a good time. And that's it. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer. Can you guys come up to the mic? Or is that too far? That'll give me a chance to get a drink. Jordan. So the question is something legacy systems. How well does it integrate with Windows? Is that a good summary? OK, cool. I can answer that. So I mentioned there's a lot of input plugins, 23-ish input plugins. One of those is the Windows Event Log plugin, which I'm told works on Windows. So that's one source of logs on Windows. A second source is files. You can use the file input for that. Windows has like 2 event log things they call event log, right? I don't remember. It's been a while since I've done Windows admin. But anyway, I know that I've gotten reports that the event log plugin does work. So that's how you would do it. To answer your question about legacy stuff, I mentioned it was written in Ruby, but the releases are packaged up into jar files. And we do, and the way that's achieved is I use JRuby, which is a Java implementation of the Ruby runtime. And so if you're used to chasing down dependencies to try and get new projects to work, you won't have that problem with logstash, because logstash comes with one big jar file with everything you need in it. And that's the way I deploy it at work. Did I answer your question? Cool. Any other questions? Go to the mic. To the mic. Yo.
Is there an HDFS output plugin?
Is there an HDFS
Or
output?
HBase, for that matter?
HBase. No, but it should be easy to write one. For example, we have a MongoDB output plugin, which no one uses, because they're smart. I don't know. No one uses it yet. But like the plugin itself, minus boilerplate, is one line of code. It's like mongo.write event. So doing the same thing for HDFS or HBase should be fairly straightforward. It might even be cool if we had just the file output plugin support like S3 URLs and HDFS URLs. That would be cool. You should file a bug, and we'll hop on that.
Hi. What was the reason that you decided to package up everything in JRuby inside of a jar file?
First, I already answered that partially, where to try out a new project, like Graphite is a great example. Graphite is a great project, but it's hard to chase down all the dependencies, get everything set up right, and I didn't want to do that. And I had used Hudson, now it's called Jenkins, for a number of years, and I rather enjoyed the fact that you can just download one file and run it, and you were good to go. That was it. That's all you had to do. And as a sysadmin, that's pretty straightforward. Normally, you're expecting to look at all kinds of documentation about how to deploy it, and then you're like, download all this bullshit and install it. Oh, but you're running an old version of Debian. Well, you have to download the new version of that thing that your upstream repository doesn't have, and So you just download one jar file, and you can deploy it. And the reason I chose JRuby was for a couple of reasons. You get proper access to real threads. So if you have multi-core CPUs, you get more performance. When there are times that a Ruby library is not sufficient and I don't have the energy to write a new solution to that problem, there's lots and lots and lots of Java libraries that may solve the same problem. 10 minutes? And so you can call those directly from JRuby, which is really awesome. I think I had a third reason, but I forgot. Did that answer your question? I forget where you went. Oh, yeah? Cool. Right on.
Question. This is really nice. But as far as I can see, it's only for access logs, event logs, stuff like that. What about like application level logs?
Yeah, so
login exceptions. Like how we personally use Sentry to log stuff like that. does this integrate somehow with it? How does it overlap with it, with Sentry or
So I had a good,
similar tool?
here we go. This is the. So when I say a log is a timestampless data, I think logstash itself doesn't come with like built-in support for certain log types. It's really up to you to help it parse and understand some of those things, and it provides you tools to make that easier, right? It gives you more efficient hammers with which to hit your logs to make them more useful for you. The demo I showed was Apache logs, but I don't know how to explain that. It is a generic log processing system. It is designed with the idea that a log is a timestamp and some data. And what that data is, it doesn't really matter. The filter plugins exist to help you process those things. Does that answer your question? Cool.
Decided to ask another question. So how do you do indexing? So I see that you can do pretty cool search on your logs. How do you do indexing? Is it in-flight? Is it post-factum?
So how do I do indexing? So I mentioned there are 40 output plugins. One of those outputs is Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is an open source tool for full text search. The language it speaks basically is JSON. So if you send it, if you say, hey, index, and give it this thing of JSON, it happily does that. So you can search by field. Let's see. It's horizontally scalable. So you can add more machines, which is quite nice. It's pretty configurable. As far as when I'm wearing my sysadmin hat, it's one of the better server tools that I've ever run. Because the defaults are very sane out of the box. If you don't have a config file, it works. It's great. It clusters pretty easily. What else can I tell you? The community for it is really amazing. Like if you have a question, they usually get a good answer for you. And they've been really good about helping logstash along, actually, because log data is fairly compressible, because a lot of it's just like English text, and that compresses quite well. So they added block compression to Elasticsearch to help logstash make better, more efficient use of your disk. Cool. And if any of you guys are hanging out in the IRC channel, the PuppetConf IRC channel, and you want to forward a question if they have any, that's cool too.
Quick question. How would you differentiate between a MySQL log and an Apache log and a JBoss log on the same machine through your tool? I mean, can you say, show me all that is? Oh, OK. So you do have
So
an
I
index for
highlighted that.
event.
And then
Okay,
at
cool.
input time, you can give every event a label. And there's two kinds of labels. There's a type, which is a single string, or tags, which is a list of things. Tags are useful if you want to tag it by like cluster. If you have 100 Apache servers, and some of them belong to certain like logical clusters in your sense,
Gotcha.
right? You can tag them with that, but in a sense, they're Apache logs, so you'll want to process them with filters the same way. So you can see an example here that I'm saying all of these logs that come from access.log are type web, and then in the filter section, they only apply to logs of type web, and that's how you sort of get your event routing.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Any other questions? I can dance? Cool. Thanks, guys. Whoa. Somebody? Oh, thanks, dude.
How quick does Elasticsearch data grow as far as data creep?
Say that one more time.
How fast, or how quick does Elasticsearch data grow as in data creep?
Data creep.
Like you mentioned, there's a blog post you did where you're effectively storing everything twice because you had the raw
Yes.
log entry as an example.
So there is a problem, and that problem is Grok. And the problem is that Grok tries to help you write a regular expression without having to know regex that parses pieces out of your log and gets like structured data. An example is, I don't know if I have a good slide for that. Let me see. No. All right, well, you guys can see, whoa, that's huge. Cool. So you can see parts of this, like that 200 at the very top line. I can point. Yay. So right, if you've used Apache before, you know that's the response code, right? If you think about how to represent that in a structured format like JSON, you say response code : 200, and you're done. But in Apache, you get this like weird format that you hope never changes. And this is like bytes, you hope. It's not labeled. So what happens is Grok will take this as an event, parse it with the pattern that you give it, and create this like nice structured data along with this as the original message. So you essentially get like data bloat. The best way to solve that is to not write unstructured log formats to begin with. There's a lot of tools that can output JSON or Avro or protocol buffers, or Thrift is another good example. To solve this particular problem, you can make Apache output JSON. And there, I have a post explaining how to do that. But the duplication you can get rid of, right? Once you parse this and understand that this is a response code, this is bytes, you can just delete this entire message and you don't have any duplication. And that gets a little bit more too technical, and I can explain that later if I have like a good venue for doing a live demo. But hopefully I answered that question. In the past couple of weeks, I've gotten storage efficiency improved by a factor of 3.5. If you parse this really properly with Grok, it inflates to like a ridiculous like 6x inflation in byte size, but now it's down to 1.5. And that'll be available in the next version, but you can use it in the current version. Hopefully I'm not rambling too much. We have a few minutes for a couple extra questions if you guys have any. Any more IRC questions? Otherwise, I have stickers. Thank you.